Come on, guy, look where you're going. Okay, I'm on the sidewalk. Come on, don't look at your phone. Shit. You gotta... I remember this drummer I brought on tour. This guy had to fucking have his leash out, coming out of the fucking head. These people tired of these motherfucking things. Drogas. Okay, this is Channel. This street here. Channel, the way Pedro is a big drain route for the fucking hill. That hill's called Palos Verdes, and people with money. It's not old money, most of it. It's like a lawyer, architect, that kind of stuff, self-made. But they get their kids fucking Corvettes, Porsches, 16 years old, no fucking work ethic. So none of them, they'll turn into burnout waste cases. Strange about humans.
By which age did you come here? To Pedro? Or to Los Angeles in the...
Yeah, politically we are part of Los Angeles. Like I was telling you, we were annexed as part of the thing to fight for the harbor. I'm from Virginia. I was born there and I lived there a couple times. And the second time, I was born in Portsmouth. I lived north. The biggest Navy base in the world is Newport News. And so my papa's a sailor, a machinist mate, engine room guy. And if you look on a map, Vietnam's a lot closer to Pedro than it is to Norfolk. So I moved here in 1967 when I was 9 years old.
So you witnessed like...
See all this area here?
Yeah.
This stuff wasn't here when I came here. See that air raid? Last Friday every month they test those out. I wrote a Minutemen song about it. But this is D. Boone's neighborhood. Part of the projects. They tore it all down and put up these track homes 30 years ago. Called it Tarragona. But Battery Street, they don't even keep the names. There is a Battery Street over here, but up there they changed it to some, these developers, right? They invent these fucking things. This all was canyons. You got people living in condos in canyons that can't see shit. Whatever. Anyway, this was the Proj. Now this Proj was an old one. It was from Second War. U.S., all the stuff was overseas, so the ports were really big. And a lot of, we had these things called Liberty ships, and then later Victory, and they're like the highways. In fact, Pedro, we still got one of the only ones that still runs. Didn't make it to Normandy. Got salt water in its boiler. But anyway, I come here, and I'm not here yet. I don't know D. Boone. I come here, and I'm going to drive you by the Navy housing where it was, because it ain't anymore. This is the street he was on. It's called Via Francesca now, but it was Battery Street. I mean, there's some context if you told me you saw Luigi Amicano, because I took those guys around. In fact, in this, no, it wasn't this boat. It was the boat before this, but same kind of thing. I took them on a trip. This here was the Proj, the newer Proj. It was built right around when we had to leave Navy housing, because my pop got stationed on another boat and was going to be up in Alameda. My mom said, fuck this moving shit. I'm staying here. And so we moved into this called Park Western Estates. D. Boone's Proj was the older one, Park Western. This is all fields here. This was here, the shopping center. We're talking, I was 12 years old when I moved there. So for the first 3 years, I'm here at this Navy housing. I'll show you. This is a big street in Los Angeles. It's called Western Avenue. This guy goes all the way into the fucking Val, crosses the LA River. But it ends here in Pedro. We got some long ass streets. And California, it's from the Spanish. Right, California, all this Pedro. Now Pedro's a fucked up thing, right? It's pronounced all wrong. And what I heard was it was the Scandinavian fishermen. They just didn't know 100 years ago, they didn't know pronunciation. But even the Latin guys say, I mean, we don't say fucking tortillas or jalapenos, fried joels. We do fuck up Pedro, and then the beach is called Cabrillo, right? It should be Cabrillo. Portuguese guy working for Spain that, I guess, discovered us. There was fucking thousands of these native people called Tugbo who lived here. So they just accidentally ran into this place and took it over. So I don't know about discovery. But that's why it's called Pedro, not in fact, even Latin guys say it, and I think the reason is it's kind of a test. If you hear somebody say Pedro, you know they've never been here.
Yeah.
So this area here, this was all developed in the 80s and stuff. When I was a boy, there was a Sears up there, a catalog store and a Thrifty. And none of this stuff, crap, strip mall. That's all in the 80s, all this development. So remember, I come even before the 70s. I meet D. Boone in 70. That's when I have to move to those projects. I just got to show you this, though, because now they tore this Navy housing down years ago in order to, more track homes, right? But during the Second War, because of the big Navy base and shit, they put oil tanks all in the grounds. Well, how many years? 70, 80 years? The shit's all rusted out. It's cancer. This was the first one, Strathmore. But when I was a boy and I'd come from Navy House, I'd walk into Pedro. This is all fields, all empty, none of that. Things change. I can imagine where you grew up and stuff, maybe it's nothing like it was, right, if you went back. And that's kind of how it is. Even though I live in the same town for 54 years? Yeah. So much change.
Yeah, you see
Strip
that.
malls, huh? This stuff wasn't here. This is empty fields. Because there was oil tanks here, right? It's a big depot for the boats for the war. And then after the Second World War, the thing with the Soviets, right? So it was never ending. Still isn't.
Was your father also in Vietnam?
Yeah, that's why we moved here.
Yeah. That's what I understand.
Well, he's on a boat. He's an engine room guy.
Yeah.
So he's not in a jungle with a rifle. He's in the world's first nuclear aircraft carrier, 9 decks down. Okay, this stuff here, these condos, that's where the baseball field, the CB's built us a field. This was where the Navy housing is. Look what it is now. It's some little fucking whatever. It's turning into this. And it was nothing for a long time. The SWAT people, the police training, and where I lived. In fact, my pad was right where this purple sign is. Right there. That's where my pad was. 27605. Samuel DuPont. And now it's Ponte Vista, Vista Point, Viewpoint. This boneyard here, this is called Green Hills. It's the big boneyard for Pedro. And D. Boone's planted in there, and so is Charles Bukowski. Charles Bukowski's last 14 years was in Pedro. He liked this town. I got to meet him a couple times. His wife, second wife, Linda, actually went to Minutemen gigs. So I've never been to D. Boone's thing.
You never go there?
Never been. I don't know where it is.
Why is that? Because you're remembering him in your heart. And
I don't know, yeah. But I have been to Charles Bukowski twice. And on his gravestone it says, "Don't try." Like some poem. Here's a old baseball field. But this is all polluted from the underground. You can't see. But I'm going to take you around and you'll see where the little pump houses are. This is all underground. What I'm trying to show you, there's consequences. People, our lifetimes are so short. And I'm always talking about the children and shit. But look what you leave them. These fucking time bombs.
Yeah, well,
humans,
I mean, I want to talk to you about two things. Of course, Pedro, music, but also the environmental stuff. So it's interesting that you bring up that first, because right now we are confronting the biggest crisis ever, and still people are not really getting it somehow. So it's interesting.
Or they're anti. They're actually actively anti. And they got belief systems to back up this shit and stuff. What can you do, Thomas? you know.
So what I wondered, like when you met D-Boon, how fast was the...
I'm going to take you to where I met him.
And how fast did you also experience music for the first time together? Because that came out...
No. I knew music before D-Boon. When I met D-Boon, the only rock band he knew of was Creedence. I turned D-Boon on to T-Rex. And the first gig we saw was T-Rex. His daddy took us. Danny Boone, he sat with us. But, you know, D-Boon was taking guitar lessons. His mother played guitar, so she already had him going. So he showed me a lot about doing music, but he didn't really know a lot about music, not yet. Then he got into it, you know, he started Alice Cooper, Blue Oyster Cult, you know, The Who, got into all that stuff. Kraftwerk. You know, Kraftwerk, right? No guitars, so what? Actually, one album there is a guitarist. I think Autobahn, right?
It was back in the days a big thing. I remember reading Lester Bangs' essay on Kraftwerk and like not really understanding what the whole approach was, like in opposite to the rock world of the US.
I think the Germans wanted to make their own version. After seeing England just copying blues thing, Germans like rock and roll, but they wanted to make a German version. And if you ask me, Kraftwerk, very funk. It's German funk. So is Can, German funk. Jackie, what a funk drummer. His own way though, not copying. Nothing wrong from learning from other people. See, like I said, look, they paint up the big tank like a pumpkin, right, for Halloween. But all these refineries, yeah, can you imagine living? And now you can see look, here's Bobby Sox, right? Little League for girls, which is great. But they got it right next to all this fucking cancer pollution. Look, all this is hollow. All this ground has rusted out 70, 80-year-old fucking this stuff underground, right? It's crazy. It's crazy. Well, what do, right? You're born into a situation.
But how important was that for you as an artist to be born in a city like that? Was it also...
I was born in Portsmouth, Virginia.
No, but like raised in a city.
See here,
like
this is important too. Right there, down that road, that's a gun range, right? Target range. Practice your guns. That's a big thing in the U.S. now, right? Is guns. Maybe Germany too. We're going to solve everything with the guns. Okay. As an artist, I think what D-Boon called lyrics, and I like this idea, he called it thinking out loud. See the pump houses? You can see them, they're little short little things. And you can see the pipes. You know what Romania, they got it all above ground, very obvious. But here, underground, it's still same hell. Environmental, craziness. Filthy, dirty. So you're doing lyrics, you're writing songs, making expressions of art. Yeah, you're thinking out loud. D-Boon, Nels Klein talks about it in that documentary you referred to, with Jeremy Cano. He said the political part was actually the music. D-Boon thought the lyrics were just thinking out loud. He thought by us, because all we knew was arena rock, right? Here's the big thing, and this is what I'm thinking back about the movement. I really think it's what it was about. It was an anti-arena rock movement. We had lost, because, 125 months with the Stooges, I found out there was a whole thing in the 60s of garage bands, little labels, all that. It just got lost when the arena rock, you have a gig like a Nuremberg rally, make a lot of money, sell a lot of records. Even the touring industry wasn't an industry unto itself yet. It was the promotional arm of the record labels. So they're really cheap. Like when we saw T-Rex, right, $2.50 or something. The California Jam was $6.50. They just wanted people. This is the grade school I went to, because I had to walk from the Navy House and go there. It's called Taper Avenue. Miss Urabi, Miss Watanabe, Mr. Vidlich. Now, we got a lot of itches in this town, a lot of Slavs, Croatia, people from Croatia. A lot of, I already learned about this being a sailor's son, because by the 50s and 60s, they really integrated the military, so that we had all kinds of different people. In fact, I thought it was so strange when I met civilians and how they lived in like ethnic groups, you know? That's not the way we were divided, but we were divided more like officers and enlisted men. So I didn't know any officers' sons. But as far as your freckles or color of your eyes or stuff, yeah, we were taught, you're all sailor sons. Okay. But then, you know what, when you're a kid, you think the whole world's that way, right? Then you grow up, you find out, no, that was just where I was. This is all fucked up.
When did you realize there's also LA outside of San Pedro?
No, this is all I knew was Pedro.
Yeah.
That's the way I got to know more. I did take a bike ride all the way to Hollywood when I was 15 years old. It took all fucking day to pedal 30 miles. I went up to the beach, the west side, to stay away from the traffic. And it really tripped me out. I thought, wow, this looks like Long Beach. I didn't know it was, you know, I had a whole different image. But most of my whole life, you know, California was here. And then when the gigs were in Hollywood. So that's where I start learning more, right? It's like 30 miles north. And also the people I meet. You know, I only knew Pedro guys. It's mainly working class here. The big work, obviously, is the port. In the older days, it was fishing. I was telling you about why we became the different port. It was a confluence of these coincidences. One of them was the fucking war finally ended, right, in 75. And Mao Zedong dies in 77. China's open for business. And then they come up with this invention to replace pallets and barrels called the container. So all those three things came together so we could leapfrog a lot of other people's developments. And that's how we became the big thing like that. So up in Hollywood at these gigs, now these gigs are very small, but man, they were so much different. Arena rock gig. I mean, I'd be watching the Germs, and then they get done playing, and there's Pat. You could talk to him, Lorna, Darby, you know, and then the guy who was just standing next to you, now he's on stage, and I hadn't seen shit like that. It blew my fucking mind. And then that's what gave me the sense too of SoCal. Yeah, okay, it's bigger than Pedro. In fact, it's 150 towns. You fly over, it looks like one big thing, but it ain't. You know, you get down there, you know, Pedro people don't even know next door in Wilmington or Lameda. They only know their own little things, what they call balkanized, huh? We're all in our little clumps. And now I've done a big loop, as you can see there. See Park Western? I'm going to take you to the park now. This is our biggest park. And this guy, it's named after George H. Peck. This cat was, he actually worked for that motherfucker. He was a conductor for the railroad, Southern Pacific. He started buying up property. And he actually developed Pedro, part of Manhattan Beach. Interesting guy. They named this park after him, and he wanted to preserve some kind of he knew 100 years ago that it was going to be all cement shit. So he made sure that we'd have some of this. And this is the park where I meet D. Boone. Now the tree, the projects he lived to, it comes right up next to it. And so the new ones I did, that's how I met him. First couple days I moved here. And he was playing with his friends. Now the tree that he was up in, they had a little fort thing, and he jumped out of the tree. Now D. Boone had really bad eyes. So he thought he didn't know me, I didn't know him. He thought I was one of his neighbors, a guy with the nickname Eskimo. And this guy jumps out. I mean, we were 12 years old, okay, we're boys. On me. And underneath, right here, this is where I had a job tying papers for the LA Times. And I got up $100 to buy my first bass. The first few years, I thought a bass was a 4-string guitar. Arena rock, you're so fucking far away, I didn't know. The ravens and crows love this park. They're all over this place. Big guys. And so, no, I'm not. And now his friends all ran away. Now the tree's not here anymore. They tore down the tree. What they did here, this wasn't here in those days, but the baseball fields were. And they made it so, because like I was telling you, the hill there, Pedro's kind of a drainage thing. So that's why you have these canyons and stuff. It's from when there's rain and stuff, and it's good because it gets filtered, right? When you have just cement and you have a rain, all the fucking bacteria that goes into the fucking ocean, I can't paddle my kayak. I'll get sick if I get splashed. There's so much bugs. So they took out the tree. The tree's no longer here, but I could show you where it was. It's kind of where that bench is. All right. Yeah, I'm going to use your shoulder. I got a bad knee. So let's walk down. If you believe it or not, when you got a bad knee, it's harder to go downhill than uphill because you got to hold your hand. Yeah, leg got a level.
I'm a runner and I know
Okay.
that going down is often harder.
Yeah, because you got to hold an angle. I was born with bad knees. Actually, Ig's got the same thing. It's a condition called Osgood Schlatter, named after these doctors, German doctors. And when growing up, parts of your body grow at different speeds. So it's all fucked up. Terrible knees.
Must be hard, I'm sure.
But yeah, but at least I got my hands, right? You could take my knees, you know. You have to wheel me around on a cart, but let me have my hands so I can work the bass. So I'm not going to be choosy. I'm not going to be an ingrate. If you got to fuck up something, I'd rather have the knees fucked up than the hands. Okay. See that palm tree? They just planted that. Yeah. See, like I tell you, things change. Can you imagine over 54 years? But this is 51 years ago, right? This is when I meet him in 1970, so it's 51 years. He jumps out of this tree that's gone, but it's kind of where that palm tree is. Yeah, you're not Eskimo. No, I ain't Eskimo. And his friends ran away. Okay? Yeah, it's good now. His friends ran away. They're all playing and stuff. And so it's just me and him. I said, hey, I just moved here. Now see that line of trees? That's where those projects are, the Park Western Estates where I just moved. So look, I said, look, I'll take you where I just moved. I'm from the Navy housing. My papa's a sailor. Is a sailor at that time. Okay. And as we're walking across the fields, he starts rattling off all these bits, you know, like a stand-up comedian, you know, just one after the other. And I'm thinking, fuck, this is the smartest guy in the world. I just couldn't believe it, you know. So I take him to the pad, show him where I am, and he goes, okay, now tomorrow I want to take you to my pad, which was beyond those trees, the old Park Western, that's gone now, right? And when we get to his pad, actually the tree was over here. It was right here, like kind of where these benches are. They took it all out. Because see, it's all this drainage. It's a smart idea, you know, so some things got to go, things got to go. But here's the big canyon that runs all the way down to the harbor, the channel, main channel. This is where we spend a lot of time as boys. Anyway, he's reeling off these bits. And the next day I go to his pad, and he has taken a cassette player and recorded this comedian off the television named George Carlin. And all that shit he was telling me the day before, he had bit off this. He didn't make any of it up. I'm thinking, dude, Boone. But it was too late. You know, smitten with the man. I just thought, man, he's just something. Even though, yeah, he didn't make any of this up. In fact, that's how we first started playing music, copying stuff off records, other people's stuff. We didn't write songs until the movement. You know, I'll tell you something. I'll show you something here that's very heavy for me too. There's a water fountain here. Whoa! They tore it out. See, right there was a water fountain. No. Stupid what? Now I remember. You know what these are from, right? Gophers. Yeah, they're digging. Yeah, these are gophers. We had a lot of them in the Navy house. There's the water fountain. What am I talking about? This is a heavy water fountain because when I was a boy and I first moved here, I got a hamster. And it was a girl. She had babies. And she bit both her babies and all their guts were open and they were dying. And I had to drown them in this I put leaves in this water fountain. And I had to drown, euthanasia, you know, put them out of misery. That really was heavy on me. This is the fucking water fountain still there. I thought it was gone. Right here, maybe we could see where D. Boone lived. But Peck Park is important to us, you know, because you're right, we're in a big city, right? But look at all this nature. And we spent a lot of time here playing in these canyons and stuff. Yeah, see, that's where he lived, is where those track houses are, you can see. Track, right? They build them all at once. Kind of like military barracks. see the gopher holes? Also snakes too. But this stuff is still here from those days. I remember one time these guys driving up in their cars and having a big gang fight. And this is early 70s, so not shooting, but like hitting each other with chains and baseball bats and shit. Out of nowhere, right out here, they roll up their cars, and I saw a lot of wild shit here. That hill over there used to be all heavy grass, and D. Boone would take big cardboards and slide down it and he could go, man, because he had a little weight, you know. Jamming down there like it was snow, you know, a toboggan. So Peck Park, very special for me. There's things like this I can go to. Sometimes, a lot of times I don't because it makes me too sad to remember. But in some ways, it is neat to remember. Because it's the stuff that I'm about these days in a lot of ways. Got developed during that time.
Also remembering is part of your culture because you always do these meals every year on his day of dying on cold rain.
No. Never celebrate the dying.
Oh, sorry.
Never. It's always the birthdays.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not the death days. People will send me things on the death day of D. Boone, and I won't answer. I celebrate his B-Day, which is April 1st, which in the U.S. is kind of the practical joke day, but it is his real B-Day. Oh, it is? Okay. Yeah, so this is jokes, but it's no joke. D. Boone was really born on that day. And that's what I want to celebrate. I don't want to celebrate him dying. That was the worst day of my life. But look, everybody's got their own way of dealing with that shit, so I don't want to judge, but just for me, I don't celebrate December 22nd.
You know the place where you fell out of the car.
No, I don't. On purpose. This pop tried to give me pictures. It's in Arizona. I don't know, a number of miles west of Phoenix. But I didn't want to know. So, but when I'm on that road on tour, right, I kind of know. But don't want to know too exactly. It's sort of like not going to the boneyard, right? I know he's in there, or his remains. But he's really here, in the Hertz.
I think the term I'm teaching at the university and why we are doing this is about remembering in the way that society is remembering artists and culture and what we are not remembering. So do you have the feeling that by remember him, you also remember like much more than him and your own music, like also the others from the decade? Because the whole thing, I mean, we all know how history is written, right? The big things are remembered and the small things disappear. And then, if you're lucky, they have a little revival or something. But it's very hard to give somebody the same picture of culture you experienced when you were a teenager and when you went up for the first gigs and something. Because they were like 100 bands, 150 labels, and all of that. How do you feel about that? Like looking at what's now the written history of the time you were present with other people, do you feel like, oh man, they forgot so much of the stuff around?
Yeah. Yeah. I think part of physically going to places is so some of them little details don't get lost. Because your memory changes. Like, notice at first I didn't think the water fountain was there. I've been to that water fountain 10,000 times, and I almost died in my... And I have remembered things wrong. I thought that clear as a bell, and then I'm there. That ain't it. I wouldn't say my memory lied to me, but it got tricked. Maybe sometimes your memories, especially over the years, 50 years, they get mixed in with wishes, hopes. And like, I wish it was that way. And slowly, you maybe do a little brainwash on yourself without even realizing. Right? Yeah, I mean, this whole idea of what's important when it comes to memory, that's a very deep and interesting thing, Thomas. And I think everybody's got their own take on it, and I think it develops through the whole life. Because in some ways, it could act as something that keeps you down. So maybe it's good to forget. Or you have it in a place where it doesn't stop you from the rest of your journey. Remember, we only got so long in this shift. Heidegger, right? He's a Nazi, fuck him. But he did say some things. People should spend more time in graveyards, maybe. Because we trick ourselves. We don't live forever. You're right.
Do you still see a lot of the people from the early 80s?
No. No, I don't. I don't. But some contact with the emails. Who's going to come down to Pedro, and stuff like that. Right.
Do you see fools like Joe Baeza?
I'll see Joe Baeza, but where's he live? 30, 40 miles up north. I'll see him at a musical event. I saw him. I played a gig at the Angels City Jazz Festival, and he saw me play that with Petra Honda, Joe Berardi. Hey, Joe Baeza. And he's from the town, right? In fact, I'm going to take you to the place where we started the Minutemen. Joe Baeza was living downstairs.
No kidding.
But, things evolve and change. Joe Baeza, I consider, really essential compadre, He's all the way from the beginning, old days. And he's 70 years old now. He's older than us. He started guitar at 27 years old just because of the movement. He's proof that the movement really was real. He was an artist, man. And he saw these other artists, guys starting bands,
How would you describe
like
the movement?
comedy. Yeah, I was going to say like comedy, like almost making fun of rock and roll. At least arena rock. I wonder if arena rock is rock and roll, But we didn't know. Man, if I would have known, I could have went and saw the Stooges up at the Whiskey in the early 70s. I had no idea. We didn't know about clubs. It was, man, that was a bad time. I'm 13 in 1970, so my whole teen years is the 70s. So this bullshit, but it actually fed the movement. The movement was a reaction against arena rock. That's my thinking. It's not a style of music. It's not even a haircut or funny fake name. Some of those guys, I only knew their fake names. Pat Smear, Spot, right? It didn't matter because all of a sudden you're in charge. You're not, you create your own parallel universe. You don't have to rely on these gatekeepers. Oh, you're anointed ones. You get to come down from Olympus and bring forth a good time, right? Fuck. So they had to make this own little thing. And remember, too, the early days of the movement, right, were young people in the 70s. That means we grew up in the 60s. Civil rights, anti-war movement. free speech movement, all this stuff in the streets, we're seeing as kids, right? And then we get up to age in the 70s, and it's over, man. It's like, there's a lot of reasons for the movement. And notice it hasn't disappeared. Notice that there's still a kind of version of it, right? For one thing, it's because it is a state of mind, and it wasn't a style of clothes. And actually, even the name was fucking funny. In this town, punk is a guy who gets fucked in jail for cigarettes. We could not believe someone would call their music this. It's very low, very low a word. But then when we saw it, I remember, I can't even take you. I can't even take you now to where it is because it got torn down. There's a marina now with a bunch of boats. But this guy, me and D. Boone are jamming with a friend of ours, Mark Weisswasser. Of course, copying, trying to do Tie Your Mother Down or something, And we take a breather, and this guy comes walking by, and he's got his hair out with Vaseline and Kotex around his neck. His name is Nicky Beat. It turns out he's the drummer of this band called The Weirdos, and he says to us, okay, this is 1977, right? There's a scene up in Hollywood where people write their own songs. And we were like, what? We couldn't believe it. We didn't know one guy who wrote songs in this town. So if you want to ask me the reason for the movement, I think it's got a few sides to it. And I can't really speak for everybody who got involved, but the way I look at it, it was anti-arena movement that wanted to bring it, the people playing and the people going to the gig were just taking turns. A whole different kind of dynamic than what we were used to. And nature works this right. A farmer, if you want a good crop, you use a lot of manure. So the more of that other horse shit that they brought, the more that we could grow our crop, which became the movement. And like I said about the Minutemen's take on it, we were a little embarrassed. Because those guys, you could tell they were just fucking learning right in front of you. Me and D. Boone had already learned some Creed and some Blue Oyster Cult. And so there was this band, and our punk experience was two ways. You go see the gigs, Hollywood, or you go get the records from the bands overseas at Zeta London in Long Beach. Mike Zed and his ma ran this record store, imports. At first, the Klaus Schulze, Noy and all that stuff, but they had the contacts. So when the movement over there, so some of these bands we never saw, we only knew them by records. Other ones, no records, just how we saw them. So that was our take on the experience. So there was one England band called Wire, and they had a record called Pink Flag with really little songs. And we thought, man, if we try that format, they won't know we're from Creedence and Blue Oyster Cult. We love the urinals, man. The idea of starting a band without ever knowing how to play, you don't even know what instrument you're going to play, you pick by random. We just thought this was so pure. We loved it. And plus, again, I think it's a reaction to our other experience where the guys are this big. Mark Boland, I had a poster of him, $2. Like I said, there was no merchandising yet, so bootlegger guys a couple blocks away. So for $2, a Xerox of, had him on my bulkhead. But man, when I saw him, he was so tiny. I played a guitar with 4 strings. I didn't know basses had bigger strings because I wasn't close enough to see. The first time I saw a bass guitar, I couldn't believe it. It's like, no wonder they only got 4 strings. Now, D. Boone's ma put me on the bass. She said, her band's got a bass player. I didn't know what it was, and then the Creedence records, he had fuck the 7th one, but he had the other 6. Mardi Gras piece of shit. There's a couple of good songs. But anyway, he's not using the cover. There's like half an inch of grape juice and the $5 stereo. You got to put 7 quarters on there to keep from skipping. So I can't tell what that bass player's doing. Stu Cook, he's pretty good. I know now, but I was looking at the covers and I noticed the singer's shirt. Yeah, Mark Boland, he wears a boa. This guy likes these flannels. I don't know lumberjack or farmer. I'm from Navy housing, but maybe if I wear his shirts, D. Boone will still like me because I cannot tell what this guy's doing on bass. I learned a lot more from the overseas guys. Jack Bruce, oh my God. The guys over here on bass that helped me was James Jamerson and Larry Graham. A little bit Alice Cooper, Dennis Dunaway, and maybe Joe Bouchard, Blue Oyster Cult, but really overseas because they would put the bass really loud. So that's what D. Boon thought. Arena rock, it's all about dominant guitar, dominant singer. Drummer and bass is all, no, we're going to change that. We're going to make it like a egalitarian economy. And he thought that's what the political thing was. And he got the, well, fuck, he told me, I know. The way R&B guys played really trebly guitar and real staccato, they made room for the drums and the bass. Of course, Georgie and me, we're going to be into that. And that's what he did. He played with only treble, no effects, you know, and no power chords. His idea that was a political move. That was our statement against the arena rock. And I think for the Minutemen, this is most core of our connect with that thing. I'm not saying it's the experiences of any of the other bands, but I just know about our band. Now, we met some kindred spirits, right? Black Flag guys first, then later the Huskers, Meat Puppets. Really interesting with Huskers and Meat Puppets because they're exact trios like us, but different way. You know, there was a lot of autonomy to the movement, you know. There wasn't, which was good. So everybody had their own take on it. You know, if that, and it did, with hardcore and stuff, things got pretty orthodox, okay? And you could see where all the experiment, and you can't blame them, they're young guys and stuff. And also a lot of backlash, motherfuckers giving you shit at school, I can imagine. You know, we didn't have to go to high school and be a punk rocker. I can imagine what that was like. So I can't speak for a young hardcore guy. Their punk experience is much different. Our thing was not against parents. We were already in our 20s. We're 22 years old when we start the Minutemen. I mean, we've been going to gigs for a couple of years. But we're not teenagers, and we're not going to sing songs against mommy and daddy and I mean, it's not our trip. But that doesn't mean those guys. Remember that guy singing about the fucking Pepsi? Suicidal tendencies, Mike Muir. Yeah. Ma, I just want a Pepsi. I mean, we didn't have tunes like that. So yeah, we had tunes. Yeah, I tried to go to work and I think of World War III. I tried to talk. It was a weird time. The Minutemen started the year Ronald Reagan was elected. So there was a real backlash against the 60s going on there. They're going to fix everything with this bunch of lies, like nowadays.
Did you have the feeling the movement was going the way you wanted the movement to go? Was this even a thinking you had at that time? Or?
Yeah, I thought the movement had a lot of variety to it. A lot of cats were taken as a starting point to. I mean, there was fucked up things. Like in those days, you couldn't tell people who were not in the movement you were part of it, or you get a lot of prejudice. Oh my God, you know, I put myself through college. I got an electronics degree I never used. And those motherfuckers, right, these are supposed to be educated people, and I had to put up with so much prejudice and shit. Fucking assholes, I wouldn't tell anybody. Eucalyptus. You know, this guy, the guy who found gold, right, the 49, John Sutter, I'm gonna take all the money, because he made a lot of money selling people the shovels and picks and shit. And I'm gonna, because they're gonna need houses, so I'm gonna get lumber and eucalyptus. It's twisted up bark. You can't make planks out of it. You can't build a house. But it smells good, you know. You've smelled it, right? Yeah. Really, see what I told you, the law of unintended consequences? I remember playing football with D. Boon here. D. Boon was so slow, everybody got a chance to tackle him, right? But he's hard to bring down, strong man. And this guy, I can't remember his name now, but somebody fell on him and he got his nose broken. I remember that crunch of the nose. Oh, God. Right there on that field. Yeah. See, there is such stuff, Thomas, about little memories. You know, in fact, I'm glad you brought that up because I'm probably known the painting your friend did, Double Nickels on the Dime. All them fucking songs I wrote, I'm not speaking for George or D. Boone, but mine, it says no turn on the right, on the red, guy. It says no turn on the red. Okay. Watts being traffic cop now. All those songs are from Jim Joyce, Ulysses. I had just finished reading it, 25 years old. And it seemed like the details is what's important. I mean, that's the only thing important, right? The whole story's in one day. It's a guy thinking about his wife. Going to a funeral. It's all, the big picture is kind of, it's all in the detail. And then that's what gave me the idea for my third opera, the Hieronymus Bosch stuff. You know, he was from Aachen, right? His name was really Johann von Aachen. His family. He ended up in Den Bosch. And I remember seeing the Stooges had a gig to celebrate Mike Cervantes' Don Quixote, right? 400 year. And the Tell is right next to the fucking Prado in Madrid. Now, I had to go there twice because I couldn't find them the first time. I knew there were 7 of them in there. But you know what they call him? El Bosco. He ain't, it's like El Greco, huh? So I went there and I saw him, and I saw, you know, they're not behind glass or anything. They're just, and I remember seeing Garden of Earthly Delights and thinking, man, this is like a Minutemen gig. All these little things to make up one big thing. So this thing about the little details, Thomas, I think that's a big part of life. Now, yeah, you don't want to get hung up, I guess, because, you know, false memories or mixed up memories, maybe the little detail that never even happened. It's manufactured for your own whatever. Mr. Freud probably, or Mr. Jung, or both of them probably have some opinions about that, but I think details are important. This tour I'm giving you, I've given it to about, you know, over 100 people. I think it's important. I'm Mike Watt, the bass player from the Minutemen and Pedro. No, I'll let you make up your own mind. I'll drive you around Pedro.
But you also touch base with not only your own history and your own recordings, you always mention those other bands. Do you have the feeling that a lot of those bands should be mentioned more often out there, that they were important but nobody talks about?
Like Nervous Gender, like Screamers.
Right?
No guitars. Yeah, because they don't fit the paradigm. Right?
Yes.
You're not copying the Buzzcocks, and you're not, you know, Buzzcocks, great band. But Pete Shelley would tell you, you know, I got to meet that man, beautiful man. It's not about that. So those bands should be mentioned, but how do you, I try to mention them. I play, one of the reasons I do my fucking show, right? 20 years, 5 months now, Watt from Pedro show.
Great show, by the way.
And you know what I mean? I try to get the music out there, but man, it's hard to break through those kind of like, what are they, paradigms or something? Some constructed kind of way things are? Not are, were, right? And what is, whenever you go back, right? What's the big enemy? Revisionism. Oh my God, for a while there, till Michael Azerrad put out that book, he used that line from that album, right? Our Band Could Be Your Life. It was like Sex Pistols or Nirvana, and there was nothing in between, like zero. Black Flag built the whole circuit we still tour on. Nobody talks about those guys anymore. It's terrible. I agree with you 100%.
And they are still the more better known. Like there's a lot of other bands where you could go to gigs in the early 80s, mid 80s, late 80s, and people would show up and they were kind of well known-ish, and now nobody knows. Because that's how history is written. Like,
Yeah, of
for
course.
a decade there's 100, then there's 50, then there's 20, then
You
there's
get your
10.
time. You get your
And
little.
then it's only one left in the memory, as you say. Like, it's no
Right.
the Sex Pistols.
And all of a sudden, and then it's like I don't know, the cliche for that whole form. When it was really a lot of depth, like I say, and Screamers, Nervous Gender, they didn't even have guitar. Well, Nervous Gender for a little bit had Frank on guitar, but there was a lot of experimental music going on with 70s punk. Incredible. Look at Throbbing Gristle over in England, right? And they're making those records with the money they make from designing album covers for Pink Floyd. That's such a trippy thing how that worked out. This is one of my favorite Mezcal pads Pete wrote. So I didn't know Mezcal in Virginia, you know, Enchilada House. That was there when I, you know, from high school. That's been there all these years. I can still go there. It's run by a little family, this lady and her ma. I wanted to show you where Charles Bukowski lived. And Linda still lives there. She takes care of all of his archives and stuff like that. And it's all behind all this. I've been in this pad. She's brought me here a few times. And that's the window he'd sit in and meditate. Yeah. Here's the driveway that goes into it. Yeah. Okay, he was dying of leukemia. And trippy, she told me he was afraid. It's hard to think of him afraid, right?
Well, at the end, when
I know, and he's only a human. Yeah, I know. But the TM, the Transcendental Meditation, that's even hard to believe, right, Bukowski?
Yeah, right.
But it helped him. She said it helped him. He liked it. Helped calm him down. Actually, he said something to me that she said she couldn't believe. One time I saw him at a book signing thing, and I asked him about this part in Dirty Old Man, where he's talking, some guy wants to go on a bank robbery with him or some shit, and he just knows it's a cop, policeman, both sides. So I said, was that real? And he goes, look, man, writing is for pretending. And when I told Linda that, I can't believe he said that. He said, he said it to me. I think he had a very big heart in some ways. I don't think he wanted you to come read your poetry in front of him, though. You know, but he was always very kind to me. He was never that mean, gruff kind of guy. That, you know, reputation.
A lot of the stuff you said earlier on when we started driving around here and how they built this area is obviously capitalistic driven America in
You
its
think so?
worst bone, yeah. And when you talk
But just
about
before that, right? Spain. Remember, California, 500 years old. Yeah.
and-
Actually, older than that, the native peoples, right? Tugva.
yeah.
The big people were called Chumash. We have nobody who speaks Tugva anymore. Right away, the Spanish renamed them Gabrianos. You know, they talk about cancel culture like it's some recent left-wing thing. These motherfuckers have been doing this to people. You know what I mean? Talk about canceled people. I mean, we got a statue of Juan Cabrillo, but where's some they finally put up a monument for some Tugva people up in Palos Verdes by a Portuguese band. We don't have one in Pedro. One day, I don't even want words. I just want a man and a woman and their kids. And put it where Juan Cabrillo can see him and Stephen White, you know, our fathers, right? But anyway, get back to your point. This was driven by capitalistic empire.
Right. So my point was like when the movement started, like all subcultural movements, there was obviously not that much money around. You had different ideas. It was about community. It was about meeting the same great people you want to see at shows again. So you went all over there again. But at one point, pretty fast, like when you read the books and stuff like that, you see like money comes in, and then the movement must have changed. How did you experience that?
Well, the first big change I see in the movement is even before the money comes in. It's when it leaves Remember, the people who first started are not kids. They're from glitter and glam. A lot of them are women. Most of the movement was women. That whole changes. All of a sudden, it's boys from the suburbs. So that's even before the money comes in. you have a huge change. And also, all of a sudden now, punk means playing really fast guitar music. It didn't mean that at first. Minutemen even got into it, right? We started playing really fast.
But how did that happen? How did the girls get out of the...
Well, it's too violent. Okay, Sid Vicious invents a pogo. Okay? Up and down. Slam is left to right. These guys would be playing football or baseball, right? They're young men with a lot of energy and And the ladies, got forced out. And I told you there was a lot of peer pressure on the kids at school. Can you imagine? So when that happens, all of a sudden Orthodox comes in. How do you tell the enemy from the friend? You have to have very distinct uniforms. Come on. In a way, the movement and the corruption of it is a reflection of all kinds of human endeavor. Pat Boone sold way more Tutti Fruttis than Little Richard. It's just reality. But that's part of the money thing. I think the division comes even before the money comes.
But that point with the girls is super interesting. Like
it is very interesting. Because rock and roll women were always pushed down. This was one time rock and roll. Although Bo Diddley had a woman guitar player with him. But for some reason the women got, the first woman I saw play rock and roll was Susie Quattro, opening it up for Alice Cooper.
So how did they react? Like, did they just stop doing music, or did they go privately more? Well,
there was a couple things. They got into the movement to be in something small. They didn't want to be part of a mass, maybe professional musicians or something, but it wasn't. Look, trip on this, and you make your own sense out. My sister takes me, before I start going to gigs, and up in West Hollywood, every weekend at Tiffany, they're playing Rocky Horror Picture Show. These motherfuckers know all the words. They're throwing the toast. It's the people I see at the first gigs. Okay? This building here, it's now apartments. This was a teen post. This was a youth center. In 1979, it's where the Reactionaries, which became the Minutemen, opened up for Black Flag when Keith Morris was the singer. So that's very important. That's our first gig, and that's Black Flag's third gig. In this hood, because they rented it cheap. No one knew about punk. With minority people, they didn't know about punk, So that's why we had gigs at Ukrainian Hall, Polish Hall, Italian American Club. The big fucking thing in our way as far as getting gigs in those days was the rock and rollers. Oh, you fucking punk fags. You don't know how to play. So Chuck Dukowski rented that place out. Some guy, there's a Clash song called Wyatt Riot. And he had it on the back of his jacket. Maybe a guy from Hollywood. I don't know where he's from. But he wasn't Pedro, because you would not wear that in this neighborhood, White Riot. You know what I mean? It's minority guys. And I know Joe Strummer, that wasn't a racist song, but can you understand the people? Bottom line, Thomas, the cops had to lock everyone in the gig or the neighborhood was going to kill them. So that was a weird gig. And that was no more, no more Reactionaries. We became Minutemen after that. I'm going to take you where you invented this. This here, this is a very heavy proj. This is called Rancho San Pedro. You don't drive here when it's nighttime. This is the weird duality about Southern California. All the great weather and niceness. You look at a lot of hood and it's beat up, right? Rust Belt, Detroit, New England. Here, no. But still rough, very rough. At nighttime, you don't drive here.
So you say you and me couldn't go around here at night?
Or even them. It's just scary. There's it's heavy, very heavy. But daytime, it's okay, kind of. Don't stop. Keep moving. No, Pedro's got some really rough parts. It really does. We just drove through a very rough part. Maybe every month there's at least one murder.
One thing I'm recognizing over the last days, especially going through all areas of LA, how expensive it got. So like there's no like.
Well, this is why New York. New York and San Francisco had the bigger scenes, and you guys, how can you be punk rockers? What's in Southern California? What's there to complain about? You got all this good weather, but you can find something to complain.
So these days, Pedro is also very expensive. Or can you?
Well, I'm $1,200 a month, but I'm earlier too. My first pad was $118 a month in the '70s. That was furnished. But then I was washing pots and pans for $1.20 an hour. Me and D Boom were working at that same Jack in the Box. $1.65 an hour.
I bring it up because if you look at like where bands come from, like in
Yeah.
the UK, for example, it's a lot of private school. That's how it is. You can't afford like being in a band when you're not maybe having like a money background these days, and have more and more the feeling it's happening in the art world. You see,
Minutemen are from working people, right?
Yeah, you are.
My pop's a sailor. D Boone's pop put in radios at the auto dealership. Georgie's daddy worked here at the shipyard. We had to make a living with jobs during the daytime.
Yeah.
That's how we did our music.
That's where I wanted to lead the conversation right now. Like, do you feel like back in the days, this was like the normal thing that all the kids you saw in bands were coming?
How do you know? All you know is your own world, right? Like when I lived in Navy housing, I thought people weren't segregated. You just don't know. You don't know.
Yeah, but then you met the others, and
No, not till a long time later we found out. Here's a monument to Joe Hill. You know about Joe Hill? He lived in Pedro for 2 years. IWW, the International Workers of the World. In fact, I'm going to take you by. They were called Wobblies, and he was, the labor movement here because of the harbor. So yeah, we met people of privilege later and stuff, but we didn't know that for a long time, man. We didn't know that. And for sure with arena rock, we never thought you could make a living off of music. We were never going to play arenas. But clubs, maybe not make a living, but you could play. And more than that, you put on your own fanzine, put on your own shows. The punk thing was making everything yourself. So that's what we got. We weren't looking at it as a career.
no, but then you made a kind of as you're living from music. Since
Well, not yet, because D Boone got killed. That started with Firehose.
yeah.
Okay, so Minutemen always worked during the daytime.
But from the Firehose era on, as you made money from that, is that something?
Yeah, but the thing changed. All right, all of a sudden it's because of REM. They're playing college radio. Punk rock was not on college radio in the old days. That came with REM. And with Firehose came right into a situation as if things were changing. Actually, Minutemen was helping set up that Black Flag and all these guys, right? But sometimes you're hostage to the sitch. It's just the way the things are. Firehose was in a very lucky situation that Minutemen never were. Now this is our main street in Pedro. This is the old courthouse. It's closed now. This is 6th Street.
And do you remember how you felt like when you realized now I can make a living from music? Did it change the way you approached it in a sense that you felt like, okay, I have to be careful that I keep this going like that? Or was it for you a paradigm
Well,
change?
that's a whole different thing, because that's when we get into touring. Touring. That's not playing Hollywood. In fact, I think only the Dills had a van. Those guys never even thought about that. It's all Greg Ginn stuff. He's the one as my buddy Dirk, he took the picture of Double Nickels on the Dime. That's his guitar safari. Here, I'll come back around so you can get a shot of it. Okay, so it was Black Flag getting us into touring. That's what made it be like a viable career thing. I said no to Columbia Records for 3 or 4 years and then finally signed with them in 91. But that's because the whole thing was changing, the movement. They thought this was the next big thing, right? They kind of thought that in the 70s. That's why they called it New Wave instead of punk. They thought punk was too fucked up of a word.
I mean, you call your bus your ship, and obviously the bus was the center of the life back then. As you said, like the touring was also.
Well, the van.
key
We never
to-
toured in buses. I mean, I toured in
the
buses,
when,
but
it's my European
okay.
misspelling.
Yeah. I think campers in England, they call caravans. Yeah, everybody's got their own word for it. But we call these things vans.
Okay.
And I learned from John Coltrane days of touring, no vans yet, station wagons. They'd have to tie the base to the roof. You know, everybody adapts to their sitch. And you're right, the boat or the van or the bus. See, the thing about buses in U.S., if you think big old fucking Prevost, right? That's kind of bourgeois, right? So that's why you call this a van. Perception's 9/10 of the law, right? So that, I'm not trying to bust your balls. No. When you hear bus, it's like one of those words like, whoa, entitlement. Even though the VW buses, they were called buses. They were called microbuses. But that's actually the first van. And I read up on that history. That was an accident. They used that to move around parts at the shop. It's the same chassis as it's also first unibody vehicle, as the Bug. Okay. That theater there is where you saw us. Warner Theater is where you saw Luigi Mikado. And here's my buddy Dirk, who took the cover picture of Double Nickels on the Dime. Guitar Safari. Yeah. Now, I'm going to show you something that's really funny. They found this in a basement under the old city hall when we were our own city before we were annexed. A water fountain, like the city fathers, because when I came here, this was all raised. When I came in '67, this was all whorehouses and bars, and they had tore it all down. And they didn't rebuild this till the 80s and 90s. And still are, you know. I don't know who lives in these fucking things. No one I know, these condos. But they built a water fountain, right? So dudes would drink water instead of getting all fucked up, boozed up. Pretty funny. One water fountain in the whole fucking town. Good old days. So, it's the idea of touring that made it look like you could do this for a living.
And did you like that?
Because
you were not around here anymore that much. You were just
no, but I had a big influence from my father. Okay, my pop would go. He did tours, right, of Vietnam and shit. Be gone 8-9 months at a time. The first couple days he'd come back, we'd pick him up at the pier. He'd go driving with me, hours spieling about the shit he saw. Man, I wanted to see the shit he saw. You know, I wanted to go on tour. You know, that's one positive thing about the military thing in my life was his touring. And he also never looked at, there's our first water fountain. Yeah, don't get drunk, guys. Yeah, that and living with all kinds of different people. I had two positive things growing up military, but that's probably it. My pop would say, Navy, never again volunteer yourself. Right, acronym. I'm going to take, our post office was built during the Depression, so it's one of these WPA works programs. And it's got a mural in it that's really interesting. Yeah, this is from the 30s, Great Depression. And I want you to see this here. It's the old Elks Club. They closed this. This was a halfway house for mentally ill people for a while. This is Beacon Street. This street was notorious, man, for fucked up. You know, sailor towns were wild towns. Raperbound, Hamburg, you know, tradition of that shit. That's all the work, right? And see that sundial? You could tell the time anywhere in the world. Pretty incredible. It goes all the way over there. See the deserts, Asia, Africa, North America. Yeah. And you could see, look at the motifs. All Empire State Building, right? It's the 30s. So look, they mix that with Empire State Building, mixed with lotus. Right? Lotus flower. And all the black marble and built like a Russian tractor factory here. In my P.O. box I've had since the New Alliance Records days in this building. Big, strong brass. Well, it's trying to break through the fog. See, right across the channel there, that's an island. That's Terminal Island between us and Long Beach. And that's where a lot of the shipping, all the cranes.
Wait for me.
Of course. Okay. So we just passed, yeah, Dalmatia Hall. Oh, I forgot. I wanted to show you the IWW Hall. It's a bodega now. This is important. This was 98 years ago. These motherfuckers. We also had Ku Klux Klan here over on 10th Street at this old church. And they went and marched on this IWW Hall, International Workers of the World, Wobblies. And they tarred people and threw acid and just all this fucking hell and shit. And you know what the big issue was? Immigration. It was 98 years ago. Same shit. Motherfuckers. Humans, short memory.
Yeah, that's the other thing about writing history and remembering. As long as people don't read it and don't really like capture the messages, then it's difficult.
They're susceptible to brainwash big time. And nothing's learned, and insanity's repeated. I'll take you by a place I lived for 10 years. Well, first, here's George H. Peck, the guy, that park named after D. Boone. That was his mansion. It's like 8 pads now, that blue house. But those days, in the 1850s, when that was built, that was big time. One of my drummers lived in there for a while. And here's the part. This is when I first started Firehose. And I lived here for 10 years in this building. This building had no electricity. And so when it was built, so I only had one outlet. I ran everything off of one outlet. It was up in this building to the back in the port.
Blue one?
Right there. 350 West 14th Street. No, it's 10. Basin. Yeah. In fact, this is very heavy. Now, this alley wasn't paved at the time. It was all dirt. But this is where I get the call from D. Boone's pop about D. Boone being killed. And I remember walking down this. It's kind of hard for me to even still drive down this thing. First thing I did when I got that call at 4 in the morning was go down this alley. My apartment, my one-room apartment. That window right there. I remember coming out here and couldn't believe, like, what am I going to do? He's gone. Fuck. I wasn't thinking music-wise, just what am I going to do as a person? He's out of my life.
Of course.
Yeah, so that alley, talk about little details. Okay, I want to take you to where we started the Minutemen. 41 years ago. No, it'll be 42 years in January. You know, like I said, we had this band called the Reactionaries, but he never wrote a song for, he didn't like that band. He only did it just for me. The real band he wanted to do was this idea he had for the Minutemen. I mean, he had me come up with a name. Actually, my name was some, I don't know about in German, but some English words, same fucking spelling, but if they're pronounced different, they're a whole different meaning, right? So we got this word minute, right?
Yeah.
It's a 1/60th of an hour. But then we got this other word with the same spelling called minute, which means tiny.
Yeah.
So I was trying to make fun of us, the arena rock thing, right?
Yeah.
We're not a big arena rock band. We're a minute band. We're Minutemen. And D. Boone said, why don't you put both those words together? Because it's also the name of some patriotic thing during the Revolution, right? And he said, motherfucker, or appropriate patriotic symbol, and let's dilute it, right? Call ourselves the same thing. I said, okay. But that's where the Minutemen name came from. Joe Bice is living downstairs. Now, he had met this drummer named Frank Tonchi. He only lasted 2 gigs. He thought the scene was too weird, got out. So Georgie wasn't our drummer at first. He was in the Reactionaries, but not Minutemen, first 2 gigs. But they comes and saves the day. Anyway, before we even meet that welder guy, Frank Tonchi, we're going to get the songs together. So just me and him, and not use amplifiers either, so we don't fucking bug the neighbors. And we're in his apartment. Justin moved in here because he was living next door to me, but we found giant fucking locusts there. D. Boone had phobia about bugs. He was like, fuck this shit, I'm out. So he moves this place here, and Joe Biza moves in downstairs with Gary Jacobely, friend of his. There it is. See, with all the Halloween stuff, that's the apartment. So Joe Biza's below. Now, we're not using amps. We don't want to bug the neighbors and shit, right? So, but we got to hold the beat, so we're stomping and stuff like this. And not using amps, it's just basic guitar getting the songs together for hours. Joe Biza, we'd see him at the gigs. He's very distinctive, but we really didn't know him. Remember, there's only like 100 punks, right? So everybody knows each other, but not really. Anyway, we finally get to talking with him, and he thought we were up there dancing like for hours. Yeah, because that's all he could hear was the feet trying to hold time. But that was his bedroom. He got pneumonia. Well, I got pneumonia first, almost died, 22. Then I gave it to him. He almost died in that room. This Weisswasser, Mark Weisswasser's mom, nursed him back. He almost converted over to Judaism because of that. And then she was murdered by her husband.
No.
Yeah, it was a terrible, tragic thing, man. See some details you don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't want to even think of that. He would do Tupperware parties. He loved this lady. Very kind, very kind. There's Mr. Chin's, that was the old Chinese. Now it's Louis number 2, not so good. But in the old days, that was the Chinese chow pan for our town. But that's where we started Minutemen. We got the first batch of songs together. Greg Ginn sees our second gig, the one that the drummer quits right after. Fuck this, even left his drum set. And Greg Ginn sees us, and he asks us to be SST002. But we don't have a drummer. So Georgie learns all the songs in 3 days, 3 weeks. And we record Paranoid Time. I'm going to take you where I take my hobbles. Now, Pedro, different things during history. For a number of years, this was the home of tuna. In the old days, tuna was just for cat food and shit, and then somebody thought of putting mayonnaise with it and making tuna salad, so it became huge. And we had 500 tuna fishing boats. Now we got about 10. But it was a huge industry. Starkiss, Chicken of the Sea, all those companies come out of here. And this is where I'm going to take you by. Completely changed. And now, see all this stuff. Well, it's hard to see with the fog, but the hammerheads, the container ships, can boats. That's changing too because it's getting all automated. The new future for Pedro is we got this thing called out to sea. They're starting to farm mussels, shellfish, and renewable energies and chows. Things change, evolve. You're right about, capitalist industry driving things. But I think people are getting smartened up about health. Because it ends up costing money, right? If you got to have all this health care, and maybe it's cheaper to live healthier. This is the marina. This was all Fort MacArthur Army base. And then they got rid of that and dug it up, and people boats. Hardly anybody from Pedro has these boats. They're all other people fixing money. (22nd Street). So every third day I come down here to hobble. So I use the elliptical trainer. This is the only thing they use warehouses for now, is to fumigate fruit. It's going to stay in the cans.
You come down for the paddling, or?
No, I come down here to hobble, to walk.
Oh, okay.
Because you can't do everything on a machine, you know, every 3 days. And this is where I do. In the morning, there's nobody here. This is all empty. I come here at the crack of dawn. And this is Signal Street. That's called Warehouse 1. That was the first warehouse built when the harbor was open to attract business. But this is where the new stuff's coming, out to sea. Out to up. You know, in Spain, this was called Alta California. The part that belongs to Mexico now is Baja California. So out to sea. And these aren't traditional warehouses. Well, they were, but now they're being repurposed as this big Marine Institute and developing new direction for harbor. This was a tank farm. Look how fucked up the trees are. Look how weird they are. That's because of the chemicals that were here. Look at that. Look how they are. Looks like George Hurley's haircut. Huh? Like Georgie. Yeah, chemicals, right? The signs say no pregnant ladies. Yeah, just no pregnant ladies. Give me a fucking break. But this is Warehouse 1. Hollywood uses this a lot because if they need a subway, this thing only did livestock and shit. Over here's the pilot station. They're doing some rebuilding on it. Pilots are much older than airplanes. A pilot, if you were in a boat, you couldn't know everybody's harbor. The tides, the currents and shit like that. So the harbors would have guys that knew their place. So when you brought your boat in, they'd take over. And that's what that's the pilot station. They make like $350,000 a year, but there's 12 of them, I think, but real responsibility. That's Terminal Island. And right there, that's the Coast Guard compound. Okay, there's the boss's house right there. Those tan buildings there, that's Terminal Island Prison. It's a federal prison. Charlie Manson was there a little while. And next to that is Southwest Marine, an old shipyard. That's Elon Musk was going to turn it into a rocket thing, but can you see the guard tower? You can see the prison. Actually, in the old days, before the Second War, there was a huge Japanese community there, Furusato, home sweet home. And then when the war came, were given 48 hours.
Yeah, so the exhibition in downtown.
There's a
LA,
memorial over there.
There's the Japanese museum.
Yeah.
An exhibition about
Right.
that concentration camps for the Asian.
Yeah, but they don't call them that, right? Relocation centers or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's brutal.
Oh, yeah.
It's
The
brutal.
thing was, they were citizens. And they didn't do it to the Italians. They didn't do it to the Germans. But they did it to the Japanese. There's something about Westerners and Asians. You know, the Chinese guys built our railroads. The railroad, to get them over the Sierra, it was so tough. They used Irish guys, German guys. But the Chinese had the skills with the gunpowder, and also they knew how to live healthy.
That's also a topic of like erasing history. 'Cause
Cancel, right? This cancel culture shit is not a recent thing. These motherfuckers have been doing it for years. And now, this guy got caught cheating with horse racing, right? And he blamed it on cancel culture. It's the go-to answer now if anything goes wrong. Oh, cancel culture. We've been living with cancel culture since what, Sumerians? 8,000 years? It's a problem. I'm not saying it's not a problem, but to say it's this new left-wing thing, oh my God. See these, you could tell that they did livestock. See the gargoyle water spouts. It's like kind of a sheep, kind of a cow, kind of a pig. It's like all morphed. You know, like I said, it was a showpiece to get people to do business. This thing was built so big they couldn't tear it down. It's like those U-boat pins in France, right? They turn into clubs because you can't tear them down. There's so much cement and rebarb. This is water taxi coming in.
Do you know how many average gigs you played in all these years? Like in the 80s, 90s? Like how many days or a year have you been?
Well, Firehose days was 7.5 years of touring, 3 tours a year.
There were like how many gigs?
You know, 40, 50.
Okay.
And that, you know, that's traveling around and shit. That's not counting the local stuff. In SoCal, because we're so spread out and all, you could do 4 or 5 gigs a month, no problem. See, that's a tractor tug. You can tell, see how it's got windows on both sides? All sides. Because they got no screw in the back. They got midships, like egg blenders. So they can go in any direction. The guy's got a little joystick. They're incredible. I know a couple tugboat skippers. They use the little, even though they got the radios and shit, they use the little beep, beep, little whistles. Look at this. What an asshole. In the last couple of years, the driving in the U.S. has been so aggressive and weird. It's one thing that's kind of almost chased me away from touring. It is so belligerent. This building here, this is the old immigration building. This is when you come, the immigration man would decide how your name was pronounced, how it was going to be spelled.
And if you make it in.
Yeah, oh yeah, of course. But he would also, your name would be changed. Nels? It should be Nils. The immigration man fucked up. Nils is a Norwegian name, not Nels. But you know, your whole life is there. That immigration officer is the next part of your whole, you know, the family. Here's where the fishing boats were. Look, there's only a couple left. That's the SP slip. Yeah, it's all changed. And mainly, the tuna's all fished out. So mainly what they get is squid. And then those two, we call those tall ships, right? They got the sails. That's part of a program called Top Sail. It's great. It's the kids from the inner city, they get them to crew on those things, because you got to come together, right? There's no machines. It's sea shanties, they use songs, right? And so these kids, even though Compton's 15 miles from the water, they never see the water, and they get to fucking crew on a fucking tall ship. Mr. Chang built this monument to the tuna flip. It's called Ghostfish. It's all filled with mementos. And these things here, they're called pots. They're used for catching, we don't have real lobsters because they got no claws, right? So we call them, well, it's called spiny lobster, but they're all actually like just giant crawdads. But that's what they use to catch those things. And they're redoing this whole thing. This used to be called Ports of Call. It was early 60s, right before I came to California. And it was like a little fake Disneyland of the harbor. You know, a little fake fishing village and a real fishing village. It's fucked up. But anyway, they tore it all down. I think they're going to call it now West Harbor. The only thing left is the San Pedro Fish Market. And they're going to put in all new. We'll see how it works out.
Have you ever thought about like leaving San Pedro for at one time, like
I do with tour.
No, but
and then the bungee cord just snaps me back.
Like living in Europe, for example, because you recorded with some Italian dudes and
no, no more record. I've had a band since 2008. El Sogno di Mainaio.
Oh, no, yes, but
it's more than recording. I've done 3-4 tours with those guys.
So have you ever thought like living in Europe for some time, or living in different zones of the States, or what made you stick here?
Well, I would think that you going on this little tour with me, you'd understand that I'm attached.
No, I totally understand.
Well, that's the reason.
But sometimes people run away for a little time and then they're
Well, yeah, but they don't have a life.
yeah,
Like my pop said, you're like a sailor.
yeah.
Do they don't sally forth for weeks at a time, right?
Did your father understand your life?
Not until the end. Not until the end. Until he only saw me play once. What really?
He only saw you play.
Yeah, he only saw me play once. It was a couple of years before he died of cancer. You know, working in nuclear engine rooms, he killed him at 51. Now, he didn't know what. He just thought music was something I did with D. Boone. He didn't know I was making a living at this shit. And I started sending him postcards. And that's where he gave me the idea for my first opera. He said, "You're like a sailor." And damn if I ain't. Okay, maybe it's not military, but it is traveling around. You know, he couldn't believe, you know, his people were from Arkansas, his daddy's people. He couldn't believe I was playing there. He didn't know things change. Well, some things don't, but some things do, you know. Imagine in his days, or be a rock and roller like Jerry Lee Lewis and playing down there. Oh my God. But yeah, Pop, I toured down there, and in some ways, I kind of followed in my pop's footsteps, like a sailor. And a sailor's always got to have a home base. He's got to have a port, right? So that's why I stay here. There's things that really attract. Also, we got righteous weather. The weather here, it's like this all the, well, maybe not so much fog, but it's like this on Christmas. It's like this on New Year's. It never gets too hot. I love Pedro. And plus, I have a lot of connection. I have a lot of personal connection. And I got this other thing, like you said. I hankered for different. I get that satisfied with my torrent. And I have spent time in Italy. Both times I recorded with those guys, got ready for tours. I'd stay where they were living and stuff.
What I wanted to ask
But it ain't a life. You're right. It's not like making a new life, a new residence. You're right. That's a different thing. But here's, you know what? I thought about that. And I just think it would take so much investment of stuff that I'd rather invested in music than having to try to make a new life. I got it good enough here. I don't want to redo.
That's the thing I wondered in the beginning when you mentioned like you started going to gigs to Hollywood at some time or
Yeah.
to other places. Like, how did you organize that? It's so far away. Like I remember me going to gigs like and that were 10 kilometers and it felt like world traveling back then. So how did you come home? Was there
Car.
always, like,
It's all car.
So it was always like some teenager already got a car and
16 years old. I bought my first Volkswagen. I ended up getting 4 Beetles, 1 bus, and 1 Squareback. 6 Volkswagens. Never at the same time, one after another.
Yeah,
But $300! It's so cheap to have a car. In the 70s, it was 40-cent gas. Everything was driving, Thomas. Everything was driving. Also, the traffic wasn't as bad. Fuck now if I would do that shit. No way, you'd go insane. It's like hours you'd spend. It was different dynamic then, okay? I never go to Hollywood to gigs anymore. Zero.
Sure, because I mean, also that movement is not
Yeah,
existing
that's
there
right,
anymore.
that's
You,
right,
you went
that's
there
right.
because of the movement and not only to
Yes,
hear,
right.
hear a band play.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's other movements out there you see right now you are interested in? Or when you
Yeah, of
go-
course, but it's more through the internet, right?
Yeah,
Not me physically going there.
yeah.
There's a lot of people making interesting music, and that's why I try to play on my show. And that way the movement never died. You know, yeah, I'm really into that. It's got to be dynamic and pliable to change with the times. It can't be some static, frozen statue to something. It's got to be, okay. Let me see here. God damn it. See this?
A knife?
No, it's hex Allen wrenches, but it should be like a knife.
Yeah.
The point is, this is where the art is. The art isn't the tool itself, it's what's to be made with the tool. That's what the movement's supposed to be. It's not unto itself. It's a vocabulary, it's technique, it's stuff for doing things. For expression.
Yeah.
Otherwise, no validity. It's just some kind of scam to trick people into giving you money or something. To me, that's a core belief.
As you drop the word money right now, I'm curious, like that legacy you have built up, that enormous catalog of important records. Do you still have, like, do you see income from that? Is that still
Yeah,
happening?
of course. Yeah, great. SST sends me money.
And
Publishing.
what do you do with the parts of the bone, for example?
It's not mine. It's not mine. I only take my quad.
His family is getting that
Of
money.
course, of course.
Okay.
We split that up when he got killed.
Yeah, no, sure.
He
But
isn't there to defend himself. And I'm not the Minuteman. I'm only the bass player for the Minuteman.
No, I was just curious to see if there's something built up with that money or like.
No. Greg Ginn pays George Hurley too. All three separate.
Yeah.
Okay, this is called Cabrillo Beach. Sand came from Catalina. It's actually the inside of the harbor. But then there's some beach on the outside. That sand came from Catalina too. This is the Cabrillo Beach Aquarium. I think it's one of Frank Gehry's first designs, the architect.
That's a big ship over there.
But that's a cruise ship. We got a bunch of that stuff. They're ridiculous. You talk about a spreader event. Fuck that. Right here. And they got actually some little dioramas of Tugva people. But you got to go inside to find them. There's a Juan Cabrillo statue of him. People put paint on it. People got all upset over that. You know, I guess it's the reality of it. You know, okay, he came here, you know, with his sword. He put his sword. We used to have a guy, John Olgin, who dressed up like him, and he was part Tugva. So you're not trying to deny the past, but like fucking worship it like it was a good idea. Enslave a whole people, cancel out their culture. I don't know. Yeah, the Crown Princess. The Princess Lines is the one that TV show The Love Boat used. And this is where I set out in my kayak. And I go to the breakwater where that lighthouse is. See, like I said, it had to be created, this harbor. So they used rocks from Catalina. Fuck, the middle wall took 20 years to build. This wall, the one that's attached to the land here, they put a railroad so they could use that to help build it. But the other one, they just had 20 years of dumping rocks. Pretty amazing, actually. I'm not a fan of these things. I'm not a fan.
No, the wow was more the weather and the wind right now filling, not the boat there.
Cruise ships. They take them, you know, they're destroying Venice. I think Venice finally outlawed them. Come in there. And the sewage off of these things. Oh my God. I know musicians that make living playing on these things.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't escape.
You can't escape.
Yeah, talk about hell. Life in hell for me. But this is the breakwater. Pretty amazing. They built this thing. It was no natural harbor. And here's the pier. When I came here, it was, of course, not cement. It was wood. Things change. One time D. Boone was out here and he got caught in the riptide. Well, his little brother Joe got caught in the riptide. So he goes out to save him. Then he got caught in the riptide. Lifeguards had to use a winch off the Jeep. They towed him in. Yeah, too bad it's so foggy. That's the hill. You can't even see the top of the hill because of the fog. Okay, I'm going to take you now to our oldest building in Pedro. It's our lighthouse. Other lighthouse. There's a lighthouse there, and that one's from 1911.
Yeah.
But this one's from 1874. That's our oldest building. Some parts are really old, the Spanish, you know, but then after that, yeah, pretty recent. especially compared to Europe. Oh man. But there was 6,000 people living here, they think. Tugva. They also had, there's an island off here you can't see because of the fog called Catalina, Santa Catalina. And they were living there too. They could paddle 26 fucking miles, 6-knot current. Yeah, pretty good for whatever. You know, they didn't have the wheel. They didn't have writing. So for that reason, they thought these people were totally fucking ignorant and shit. Ridiculous. Yeah, the sand is from Santa Catalina. Humans creating worlds. And the tradition of touring goes back to vaudeville. When farmers, there's no television or radio. Farmers, factory workers, the only way they're going to get arts and entertainment is you go to their fucking town. I don't think it's a little side thing. I think it's an endeavor unto itself. Very righteous tradition to be part of. Honest wage for honest work. See, Hollywood's here. They're filming here all the time. You love Pedro. So, I know reading interviews, it seemed like it was all the drudge and jury, but man, me and D. Boone, especially D. Boone being so much into history, the idea of actually physically going places, like what I'm doing for you right now, physically going, that's a big part of tour. It's not one hotel lobby, another hotel. We never toured that way. There's Stephen White. He helped get the harbor. So it's like this one white guy waving to the other white guy, hey, it's all free. Take it. Okay, a little humor,
That's the thing about touring. Touring is cultural exchange.
I think it's bitching. Yeah, but I remember people, it's like taking out the trash or taking a shit, it's a drudgery. We embraced it, man. We really got into it. T. Boone would make us stop at every fucking Civil War battlefield, every Revolutionary War battlefield, the fucking fly fishing museum, the barbed wire museum, whatever the fuck. It was opportunity, O-word, not B-word burden. We loved it, man. There was this history teacher we had at San Pedro High, Mr. Karg, and he told us when he graduated high school, he got a Volkswagen, and he went across the country just to see the country himself. And not like my pop's stories from tour when I was a boy. All this stuff fed into it. It was very romantic. I still do. I still love tour. It's probably a big reason why I didn't move in other places, because I got it from touring. And it's hard to explain. Now, some people hate touring, okay? So it's hard to explain, why you like it and why you don't like it. It's like taste of food.
But did you miss the locals here? Did you miss?
I come back. I come back.
In Zealand, that sounds.
Brother Matt lives right there where I do the radio shows. I come back. I told you the bungee cord, it snaps his back. This is funny. This was like some fraternal organization called the Red Man. Yeah, and Native people weren't allowed to join it. This is the good old days, all the double talk. Like People's Republic of North Korea. Yeah, look, they got Native guys in the winter, which is great, Improve Red Men, that means not drink the fucking whiskey that they sold them. Fucking assholes. So this was Point Furman. At the time this lighthouse was built, there was no houses. This was the wilderness. And the trippy thing about a lighthouse is like, yeah, look, aim for that. But in another way, it's like, don't get too close, the rocks. Right? It's got a little duality working there. See, Point Furman Lighthouse, 1874. And I finally got to play this stage a couple of years ago. And I know D Boon would have loved to do that, but we never got the shot. The town was so against us. It was so hard for Minutemen to play in Pedro. They were so fucking uptight about punk. We tried to play the Croatia Hall, maybe 2-3 songs. They threw shit at us, made us stop. That was right after Russian from West Hollywood opening for X to play in our own town. Man, the locals didn't like us for a long ass time. Now, there's a bench under the bridge, Vincent Thomas Bridge, and the Minutemen are in the little tile. Okay, it's not big recognition, but all these years later.
You going out?
Yeah, I want to show you the lighthouse. This is the oldest building in Pedro. 200-foot cliffs here. A lot of people fall off and die. Please don't. You talked about buses and stuff. Walker Cafe, that was actually the last place of this thing called the Red Car. We had the Pacific Gas and Electric had this 1,000-mile route of public transportation. I don't know if you noticed Santa Monica Boulevard, how wide it is, because these things went down. For a dime, you could go from Pedro to Santa Monica. They tore it all up in 1960 for cars and buses. Now we're spending billions to try to rebuild it. You know, Thomas, you asked for some logic. Maybe there ain't any. This is where, in the summertime, they do the Shakespeare by the Sea, huh? Working class town seeing Shakespeare. Why not? I'll tell you what keeps Pedro in a lot of ways is that working harbor. Because everywhere by the water in SoCal now, big bucks. You're right. And it's happening to Pedro too, but one thing that helps is the working harbor, you know. This 1874. There was nothing out here. In fact, the first lighthouse keepers were these two sisters, and they got so lonely they had to move out, and this old man took over, and he was having like these orgies and shit with. There's a funny history to this place. And then I'm going to take you up to the prac pad. I've had this practice pad 36 years. I'll start with Firehose. This is one thing that was really difficult for me in D Boon. No place to practice. Always lived in apartments. So when I got this, it's the northern reservation of the Army base, and they closed it and gave it to the city for artists. And I got the latrine, the officer's latrine, you know, where they shit and piss. And I put in a bulkhead and a hatch, and I practiced there 36 years. In fact, I got prac with Tom and Raul coming right up after our little thing here. Ficus, kind of a relative of fig, magnolia. These things, they can like turn into, one tree can turn into a fucking forest. Banyan tree. See, Catalina is right there, but you can't see because of all the fog. See the pelicans? Pelicans have the big pouch under their, and then the other ones are gulls. They're all chowing on the fish. See, the fishing boats have just been by. So now they call them fish royals, huh? And the birds just go for them. That's the Point Furman, this is called Point Furman. And that's the Point Furman buoy. And that's where I would paddle my kayak. So you come out, so you can see part of the breakwater there. See the curve? See the wall of rocks?
Oh, you kayak down there?
Well, I come out, there's an opening you can't see, but there's an opening, and then I'd come over and yeah. Every morning. Till my knee got so bad I couldn't get it out of the boat anymore, so I had to give up. Raven. You know how you could tell it's crows and ravens, right? Their tails. Raven has more of a fan, the tail feathers. See, more of a fan where the crows are straight across. If you turn sideways, you can see his tail feathers, how it's got like kind of a diamond at the bottom. This is our oldest building. They haven't used it for a lighthouse. They built this during the Second World War, right? Because the Japanese scared us. We built all this stuff. We thought they were invading. See this? See the little bird? Hummingbirds. They love these flowers. You know, when I started doing my first opera, I got a bike. I hadn't ridden a bike in 22 years. I started riding again. I started listening, started seeing things like birds, sounds, song. You know, whole different reality. Sometimes you don't have to change the outside to change your inside, you know? I think that's part of your journey in life. All these things that you're told are so important. You start saying to yourself, you know what? I'm going to make up my mind about certain things. I'm going to start listening. I'm going to start noticing. I'm going to start smelling, you know? And that, I think, is a personal kind of thing. I don't know if that can really be forced on you to take hold where you feel it genuine. Amazing. Amazing thing about hummingbirds, man. You know, they can fly backwards, right? Them and dragonflies, most amazing flying things. There's some hummingbirds that fly to Mexico, over the Gulf of Mexico, right? There's open water for hundreds of miles and little fucking hearts. It's really amazing. I'm always in awe of that. Different kinds of fads. Over here on these cliffs, it's hard to tell, but we're a couple 100 feet up. But there used to be this thing called hang gliding. And they'd have these big sails, right? And then enough guys got killed, they stopped that. Humans with their trends, they come and go. Now those cliffs, well, when I first came here, they were dumping DDT right off. We had no fucking kelp. You know, and all kinds of marine life. Oh my God, it was a disaster. Then they made Monsanto, that was the company who made it, stopped pumping that shit out in the earth. She built a crust over this stuff, and they all came back, including shit like peregrine falcon. The peregrine falcon is the fastest animal on the planet. It does 200-mile-an-hour dives. And we got them right off here. I've taken pictures of them. Little guys, blue, gray, gold mask. Yeah, here's the stage. I finally got to play here a couple of years. And D. Boone, it was always his dream to play here. This is where they do Shakespeare's. But it was a fucked up thing, too. I had to be part of this event where this guy goes on before us with some big racist spiel. It was like, what? Okay. You got to live with your neighbors. You know, that's what you got to wish for, is good neighbors. But anyway, I got to play here. Yeah, I wish the Boom could have. Damn it. See, here's another one. These trees, amazing. Ficus. Look at that guy. You know, because some are brought, but then some are, you know, they're of here. So they're kind of cactusy. Yeah. It's trippy. And you know, like you were saying about the old days and the records and the 100 bands and the 150, you know, you got into all those details. Why? You know, it just interested you, right? Brought you in. It was a little world that you could feel part of.
Yeah, it's also when I teach.
Yeah.
I also show that the students are musicians mostly. So also it's about like there's all these weird mechanisms how music is like some music makes it, some music don't make it to the ear of the people.
Yeah.
Not even talking about success, just like being that people recognize it. And
Yeah.
with a lot of these re-release labels, we also see like there's coming maybe a second chance, like somebody digs it out and brings it out, and suddenly people get it. Like, wow, that was a great record. So it's so tough to make your way, even if you're talented, even if you're fighting and like you're willing to give everything. Still, a lot don't make it.
Yeah.
So it's important to show the variety out there and that art is not just like those.
You mean history is not written by the winners?
Right. That's what I mean. I mean, it is often written, but
Yeah, I know. I was making fun. Irony, ironic. I was being ironic. Yeah. You know, the whole thing about the public and the personal, it's such a weird duality. What informs which? Which informs which? You know, if all this stuff is about individual experience, then what's the whole fucking idea of a movement, right? It sounds ridiculous. But I know that if there was no movement, there'd be no Minutemen. I know it. I totally know it.
Of course not, because the movement or like the idea of a community gives you also the
Empowered us,
confidence to
yeah.
do things. You feel like I'm not alone in this,
Yeah.
and suddenly the high cliff is a small cliff for you.
Like you talked about touring Europe. How did we first tour Europe? Black Flag brought us. Right? Community. We're in the same boat. We're eating the same tofu on white bread. Yeah, it was econo, but we got to do it. We could have never done it without it. You know what I mean? And these guys from Hermosa Beach, right there, San Pedro, they're 15 miles away, which might mean a whole another universe in this context. But you know what? Come on. Beautiful guys. Beautiful guys. I'm never going to forget that. You said the word community.
Did you make photos or did you?
Not
are you a
enough.
Documentator or
Hardly
diary guy?
any. No, I didn't do diaries yet. I did one of the Europe one. It was fucked up. That's our mascot, the three-eyed fish. The Koreans gave us this bell the year we graduated high school. The Koreans gave us this bell for thank you. That war in the 50s. And that's what this now. Asian bells don't have a clapper. So they got a log on a chain and they pound it with that. And see, this was on the high ground. Now, the last military manifestation of this thing was missile. Yeah, they had this, yeah, it was against missile. You know, too many Soviet bombers. So what we'll do is we'll put little atomic weapons in these missiles and, yeah, fuck. Luckily, it never happened. And then they closed it, like I said, they turned it over to the city. Marine Exchange, these guys run the harbor traffic. Yeah, all that traffic, it's going, right now we got, what, 100 boats backed up? You know about that, right? Supply chain problems. There's all kinds of canned boats sitting out. It costs money to sit in the harbor, so they're sitting out in the ocean. And we got calm enough seas. Sometimes we get bad storms. There was a real bad storm that breakwater saved a lot of boats. But usually it's pretty calm. And I'm going to take you my prac pad. So the military is still in my life. Okay, it's former. You know, it's an Angels Gate Cultural Center now. When they say swords into plowshares, right? See his tail? You can see his tail feathers are more like this instead of straight across. That's how you can tell a raven. Also, ravens have big feathers around their necks. Those guys are so smart. Oh my God. See, there's a little gallery in there. And this is where you got to have a prac pad. It's almost like, the boat for touring. You got to get the tunes together somehow. There it is. That's a former officer's head.
That was your practice room?
And it's not was, it is.
Oh, it is.
We're gonna go in it.
Oh, man. Okay.
This is the last stop on the tour. But, Pedro's not just a museum, okay? It's also functioning in the day. Motherfuckers. They just replaced our sidewalk. This was all cracked up because the earthquakes, Yeah, it's not all museum piece. This is in the moment, in the function, and in fact, real soon Tom and Raul will join me and we will have practice. We got gigs next week in Texas and Colorado. This was done by a German artist. This is supposed to be a portrait he did of me, and he had me sign it. And his name, Bara. So that's Mike Watt, through German artist eyes. Thick paint like Klimt. Gustav Klimt. That's like my name, Watt. Why is there a T at the end? So this is where the shitters were. I built this bulkhead, this wall, and then this hatch, and I tore the shitters out. Okay. Get the cart out, shine cart. Remember, Goodfellas, go get your fucking shine cart. That's a shine cart. Let's turn on the fucking lights. And this is where I prac. This is where I get everything ready. Commiserate with my man. Got this from Chicago, the double door. Helps calm down the acoustic. Steve Perkins helped me get this drum set together. In fact, it was for the Italian guys when they toured over here. They did one U.S. tour. And I thought, why rent a kit? You give it back. Why not just get one Econo and also not have to wait for prac, right? Set up, tear down. Tom Watson plays there with his guitar amp and something. Here's my bass too. Set list. Here's the third opera libretto. Memorizing this motherfucker was a deal. I think this is the current set we're doing. A lot of songs I wrote for the Minutemen. With the pop group song and with Stooges song. We're working on the Missing Men album. But right now, getting our stuff together. This is when I did the first Ramones album with Clem Burke, Joey's brother. Mickey asked me to play the Celebration. It was hard learning those things. They were trippy. And Clem Burke right here, he lives up in the Val. He's a great guy, man. Good drummer, too. Tim Kerr from Big Boys did this picture of John Coltrane for me. This is when I used to have 500 teeth. This thing was so fucking big, I couldn't get it in the boat. I had to take it off the wood, and roll it up. Yeah. So there's nothing like prac pad. It's to me like the tour boat, like the vehicle. You can't get anything done with that. And this is stuff people have given me, kind of totems for good luck. So it's kind of the reality of my world. It's pretty simple, my music world. You know, get the songs together, practice them with your guys, get in the boat, go play pads, come home. In 40 years, it has not changed that much. But blue-green algae, right? That shit goes way back. Some of the first life. It never evolved. You know, you find the niche. You're right about the society games. How does some stuff get picked to succeed, not get picked to succeed? Yeah. Is there any justice in any of that? Probably not. It's terrible. Is there a way to make a more equitable way? You know, you read about Edgar Allan Poe trying to make a living at writing. That was like impossible in those days, right? Now you got writers, people make a living off writing, but man, it seems like it's getting really hard for journalists. So I wonder, you know, humans. Kind of a strange self-hate thing. And hubris. It seems a big part of human thing is hubris. Maybe hubris, human, close. That's a big problem. That's one advantage. You were talking about the movement gives you confidence. But maybe it also removes some fucking, ego, judgmental shit. You know, you feel a little safe because people don't have it all figured out. It's a wonder world still. Maybe. It was a great time, and it's responsible for a lot of how I am now, but, you know, I have to live in this time. So I'm not trying to get all sentimental or nostalgic because fuck that Happy Days, Fonzie, Potsy shit. I remember when that show came on, my pop said, those were not happy days. So I'm not trying to say that, but there was some stuff there, like some ethics I learned that I still preserve, still use now. Because why? They work for me, and it feels right. Correct? It has a certain kind of integrity that resonates. And don't feel jive like I'm just, whatever, dick leeching or putting up a front. It's trippy how I ended up doing music for a living. I never planned it. I got into music to be with my friend. But things happened. And, man, it's a trip. I lost him. I had to keep going. I didn't know I would be able to do it with music. But since we got started, why not keep trying until you get knocked off the horse or whatever the fuck. And so that's, next month I'm 64. Only 64 more. And then we'll take more time to figure it out. But in the meantime, yeah, I'm kind of busy living it.
Thanks so much for taking the time here.
Oh, Thomas, no problem.